I am feeling a little bit like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. And don't you dare say one thing about my resemblance to Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, okay? My dog's name is Rosie, not Toto. But there's no place like home. And I was just saying to Dan Mahar off the air before we started recording this week, back from a 5-day roadie, and I know for my friends in the queue or the dub, 5 days, 10 hours in one stretch on the bus is absolutely nothing. But for us Southern Ontario softies, it's a long way to go. 3 cities, Sault Ste. Marie, Flint, and Saginaw. Great to see all of them. I love getting there, but the getting to there is getting a little bit harder for these old and weary bones. It's great to be back home.
Yeah, well, I heard you on the broadcast last night. You and Josh Piercy talking about how cold it was in Saginaw. So I mean, not that different than it was at home in Kitchener, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm sure that makes it even more challenging.
It was extremely cold, although I will say, too, that when we left Southern Ontario, it was a bit of another snowstorm coming in as we were heading out, and our weather was actually better. In Sault Ste. Marie, when we got up there midweek last week, we had better weather, clearer skies, no snow falling while we were there than all of our friends and family had back home. So I was aware of that. But boy, we finished up in style, cold-wise, in Saginaw. Still got the pregame walk in, but paid a little bit of a price because you don't pack all those warm and woolies for a road trip like that. Nonetheless, we are glad to be home. We're glad to be here with you again. It is the penultimate episode of the OHL podcast before Christmas. We'll drop you one more for a little Christmas present next week, and then we'll take a little time off as you will enjoy time with friends and family over the holidays. So will Dan and I. Might be a good chance for you to catch up on previous episodes if you want. Go back to some of the old interviews. There will be an interview later in this episode with the new VP of Hockey Ops at the OHL offices, James Boyd. A lengthy history in this league, starting as a player. How does he view this role and the Ontario Hockey League's status as the best development league in the world today? How do you maintain that? All of that coming up with James Boyd. So a perfect time to remind you, hey, hit that subscribe button, okay? Make sure you're following along. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe right here, right now. Also, leave us a review. It helps other people get to know our podcast. Drop a comment, interact with us, YouTube, Instagram, the OHL podcast. You'll find Dan Mahar on Twitter at his name, or it's X now, at Dan Mahar. I am at Farwell_OHL on X. And our email inbox is always open to you. OHLpodcast@Rogers.com. Dan, I think the OHL podcast bump is having itself a moment this season because we've talked about it with coaching hires in Sarnia, all kinds of different things going on. And you said a few weeks ago on this very podcast that, hey, Sault Ste. Marie, I'm looking at you. There's an opportunity for you to bolster your roster in a crowded Western Conference. Boom, they go out and get Colin Fitzgerald for a half dozen draft picks. And 1 week after that, how about Lucas Fisher from Sarnia? More draft picks, and Hunter Sullivan go back to the Sting. But Dan Mahar, true or false? You have a direct line to Hounds GM Kyle Raftis, and you two are co-conspiring on all of these moves up there in the Sioux.
Yeah, I mean, I do really think I should take credit for all his work here because I mean, I'm sure he was sitting around, probably feet up on the couch watching TV, and he saw the podcast and trades. All right,
I should get to work. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, no, it's just one of those things that's kind of great to see because as you and I obviously love trades, right? There's something to talk about. There's something that keep fans engaged, and it was slow. It was slow through the first bit of the OHL season, and I start looking, who's going to pounce here? Who's going to pounce? And who's going to kind of signal what their intent is? And just, I every time I see that Sioux roster and what they're capable of and how they're trending in the right direction and what they had in their pick cupboard, as well as some young players, I just thought, this is, you can't guarantee Brady Martin's back next year. So there's a lot of things that were lining up for the Sioux. So yeah, I'm sure Mr. Raftis was already on it, but yeah, it's nice to be aligned with them, right?
Well, and how about that blue line? You talk about aligned. How about the blue line now up in the Sioux? You add Lucas Fisher to a blue line that already boasts Chase Reed, Callum Croskery up there. I mean, you've got yourself a nice-looking back end with the Greyhounds.
Oh, do you ever? That team, the thing that I always love about the Sioux Greyhounds is they can always play at speed, play at pace. It doesn't seem to matter what iteration of the team you're looking at. Now, Fisher comes in, and there's a guy trending towards elite, right? When he has the right surroundings and gets things going again. And I think, we saw maybe a little bit too much enthusiasm and energy for his first game in a Greyhounds uniform, looking to make a big impression. Boy, did he ever. A couple massive hits, one a little shading on the illegal side, got him a little suspension in his first game. But I mean, I think that's what he's going to bring to the table, right? He's going to be a guy that jumps up into the play, can lay the body. You got to know when he's on the ice, but he also can get pucks to the net too. He can distribute the puck. So just a massive piece for that back end, which was already pretty darn good. I mean, you already have Chase Reed, right? You talked about Crosby coming back. You just have so many pieces up there that are solid. You don't get relief now when you have Lucas Fisher in that lineup as well.
Yeah, and he lasted all of 15 minutes and a bit in his Sioux Greyhounds debut before getting the 5 and a game in that introduction. But the Hounds would go on to win the next game out as well. They've won next couple after that, actually. It's 5 in a row now for Sault Ste. Marie. And so while we're talking, Dan, about that team being one that you thought, who would be the first to pounce, they had the assets and maybe the desire to go for it this year. It leads us into the season that we're in. And it's not just the holidays I'm talking about. We're going to have a little holiday trade freeze. We're going to have a World Junior trade freeze, which means really there are very few days left between now and January the 10th for general managers in the Ontario Hockey League to make deals ahead of that January 10th trade deadline. If you were to kind of survey the landscape in the Ontario Hockey League, who is it that you see might be interested in making additions? And who is it that you might see moving the assets to those teams making the additions?
All right, well, there's a bit of a list here. So, I mean, I'll start in the West because that's where we were just focused with. So, obviously, Sioux's a buyer. I fully expect Windsor to be a buyer. Surprised something hasn't happened there yet, but I'm sure we'll see it. I think Guelph obviously is a seller. I'm looking for the Memorial Cup next year. I think surprisingly you're going to see London be a seller. We've already heard whispers that Sam O'Reilly, Jared Woolley are a couple of the players that are getting interest from around the league. So I think London has signaled that. I think you'll see Owen Sound trade Carter George probably. I mean, that was always kind of what we were thinking coming into the year. Owen Sound was so good in the first stretch that thought, oh, do they rethink this? But you've got Matthew Kapreski there. You got Trenton Bennett. You've got all kinds of reasons to look forward to the future, and you can get a haul for Carter George. So I'm kind of thinking that's where they go. The interesting one for me in the West is Kitchener. I don't know which way they're going. If it were me, I just based on how they've played and how things are trending with their injury situation, I'd be very loath to buy this year. I might still try and look towards next year with that 2007 group, recoup something for the assets. But it's a real tough position for them because despite not being particularly sharp all year and having severe injury concerns, they're still right at the top of the standings, which kind of spurs the GM to say, maybe we should go in this year. But when you ask if it's a buyer's or seller's market, I kind of feel like it's going to be a buyer's market because there's so few of them this year. So you might not get what you think for some of those assets, which might influence your decision as well. But maybe I'll stop there before going to the East in case you want to weigh in.
I'm glad you did that because I did want to jump there for a moment. I agree with what you're looking at across the West, particularly when it comes to Windsor. I'd be very surprised if they don't make a move to add. And when the Owen Sound Sun-Times and our buddy Greg Cowan is reporting or asking the question publicly in a story, is Carter George on the market, and quoting general manager Dale DeGray, you have to think that's likely the direction that the Attack are going to move in because that Western Conference is awfully crowded. And I agree wholeheartedly with that situation in Kitchener. Our bias being based in the city of Kitchener, notwithstanding, I think they make a really intriguing example this year of the decisions that general managers face. And this might be one of the biggest ones because of what you just talked about. And as high as the expectations were for the Kitchener Rangers coming into this season, and you look at the things that just didn't pan out from Adam Valentini to Oscar Hemming, et cetera, the injury problems. Luke Ellenis, an NHL drafted power forward, just the kind of player the Rangers seem to be lacking right now, is back on the shelf, and it doesn't seem like he's coming back anytime soon. And despite all of it, they lead the Midwest Division, and you have to think that they might be a little piece even away from making some more noise in this Western Conference this year. So who the heck knows? But I think it's a really interesting example of how difficult things can be at the deadline. So let's jump over to the East and what you're seeing over there, Dan.
Yeah, so everyone's handing it to Brantford, right? So there's no point even trying, right? Well, no, I think the times have changed a little in the last month, which is interesting because when the Brantford Bulldogs acquired Jet Luchenko, everyone said, "Oh, like this is ridiculous. The rich get richer. We can't." But in that time, I don't know if anyone paid attention to the Barrie Colts, who are trending extremely well, almost like complete wagon right now. And complete wagon, I'm remiss not to speak in the West of another buyer, which I forgot to mention, which is Flint. I think the Flint Firebirds and Barrie Colts are very similar in the sense that they've both been wagons for a stretch here now, and I expect both those teams to be buyers and sneaky buyers because those teams just aren't losing right now. They're overpowering opposition, and they're a little bit older rosters. You can very clearly see a GM looking at those saying, one or two extra pieces here, and we can do this, especially in the West where it's wide open for a team like Flint. Add the right piece or two and they easily could win the West. So in the East, I expect Barrie. I expect Ottawa may add another piece because I think they're looking at least getting 2 rounds of playoffs, if not 3 here, based on the roster they've put together. So expect them to buy, and then we'll see what else Brantford chooses to do. But I also, when you look at sellers, I think couple teams with a big piece on the market, like the Sudbury Wolves with Nathan Villeneuve and Kieran Walton. Like those are 2 big chips that will be in play. So that would be a seller. And then the interesting, because there's always an intriguing team, is there not? So I expect Kingston to sell. They've got some nice pieces there. Jake Battaglia might move. We'll see. But the Peterborough Petes are interesting for me. Do they kind of hedge and go for it next year when they're looking very strong? Maybe sell another piece or 2 this year, or do they look for home ice in the playoffs and maybe a couple rounds as well? So they're kind of Kitchener East for me this year in terms of I'm not exactly sure which way they're going to go, but I would err on the side of potentially selling.
What I find interesting in the East, first of all, I'll get to the most interesting in a moment, but the Brantford Bulldogs, as much as they have already bolstered, right? Sandu, Danford, Jet Luchenko, they ain't done, Dan. This team, as good as they already are, they want to make as sure as they can that this is a year for them to stretch it all the way. So watch for Spencer Hyman to make more moves for the Brantford Bulldogs to do as much as he possibly can to bolster that lineup. The intriguing team to me, and I say this because the pieces are so tantalizing, I think, to other teams, but oh my gosh, all of the expectation coming in, the great start. How do you sell to a fan base that is starving for something that you might be resetting? But I think there's a chance in Niagara for Frank Evola to start. I do. I think there's an opportunity here. And boy, oh boy, have you got some pieces that I think other teams would be interested in. I'm looking at Kevin He, I'm looking at Ryan Robrecht, et cetera. And I know that's going to be a tough one, but you're in there. You got that great start. The wheels have come off the wagon to some degree, I would argue, at this point of the season. If you're going to put your stamp and get the kinds of players, and I'm not trying to disparage any of the existing players, but you want to make this your roster, you want to make this your team, I think this is Frankie Vola's opportunity to do that. He already moved Brady Waslin, a draft eligible this year. Maybe, just maybe, they hit the reset button and see what Evola can do kind of from the ground up. So I think Niagara is pretty interesting too.
That's a great point. As I hadn't gone there. I did not want to go there with Niagara and tell their fans, by the way, you're probably selling again this year. But starting to hear the whispers, you're absolutely right. Kevin He, Ryan Robrecht, those are 2 pretty big pieces that could move. And I can see, does a Windsor Spitfire team look at those and say that will help the top end of our lineup? So yeah, I can see it as well, which is kind of depressing. But your point about putting a stamp on the team and renewing it with Frankie Vola, I just wish, like such a light return on Brady Wasselen. And, you look at the bit of a a buyer's market this year. So the prices haven't been astronomical like we've seen in the last few years. So, I mean, some of these GMs got to be looking at that saying, I kind of want to sell this year, but I'm not sure this is going to stimulate the rebuild as much as it would have in other years. So, but you're right. Niagara is not where they should be. So they'll be an intriguing team as well, and I'm kind of leaning towards sell there as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We talked about it in the context of Kitchener a moment ago, but overall, your point on the value, I guess, in the market right now, we have not yet seen the 9 or 10 draft pick moves made, which we have seen as recently as last season. So you sit back and you wonder, okay, I do have these pieces, but is it worth it for me to dismantle, start over, or hope that the wheels get reinflated and back on that wagon, whatever the case may be, and see what you can do with what you've got. So that will also give general managers pause, and probably, I wish them all a very Merry Christmas. I hope they get to spend some time not thinking about these things, because it's going to be a really interesting couple of weeks ahead in the league for sure.
Yeah, and I think the part that most of us forget is these GMs are trading teenage hockey players, right? And you commit to them for the season, and the toughest ones have to be the ones like Niagara, do they not? Where you thought it might have been an all-in year. You thought we're going to be in this, we're going to go for it. So these guys that you never thought you were going to be talking about moving, suddenly by Christmas you're thinking, geez, do I have to move this kid the next couple of weeks? So I mean, it's a stressful time for everyone involved. And then, of course, we didn't even talk about the dynamic of some players calling their shots a bit, right? Saying, I want to go to this market, or I want to go to that market. We heard those whispers with Luchenko and Brantford. And, I believe Colin Fitzgerald really did want to go to the Sioux. And there may have been other players there as well. But, I mean, that factors into returns as well. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And it's not just a video game here, too. You have some emotions and some families and everything involved. So it's a stressful time for all.
We started this episode by talking about me having just returned from a 5-day, 3-game road trip, 3 games over 5 days. Farwell, you're not working very hard. I just want you to know, though, the work continues even while we're away. And I had the opportunity while away last week to catch up by telephone, but with our friends at the CHL head offices. That's right, the very Canadian Hockey League. And obviously, you can guess where this is going. It was to address the concerns that have been raised and the questions that have been asked around the selection committee for the 2027 Memorial Cup. So let's be very clear yet again. Neither Dan nor I believe that this was fixed, or that the Guelph Storm and the city of Guelph did not deserve the winning bid, the right to host the 2027 Memorial Cup. We are thrilled to death for our friends in the Royal City, but there was a very clear conflict of interest present here. We have documented that and wondered, what does the league do about this? So based on the conversations I was able to have over the past several days, I can assure you of a couple of things. One is that the CHL wants to make it clear that the final vote in the awarding of the Memorial Cup to Guelph was 4-1. So even if the person with the conflict had recused themselves, it would not have made a difference in the final tally. And the other thing that the CHL very much wishes everybody would do is get on with celebrating the awarding of the cup to a deserving franchise and a deserving city, celebrating its bicentennial 200th anniversary in 2027. That's all fair game. I can certainly understand that from the CHL's perspective. It was also acknowledged that every time they go through the bidding process, they seek feedback just like this to see what they can do to improve. And there was no question made, while it was emphasized to me that these are volunteers on that committee, which is totally cool. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus or say anybody is a bad person, but we do some work with these volunteers to ensure that there are no conflicts of interest present. We've talked at length about the Hockey Canada conflict that was clearly there. I've been asked at different times, why was the father of a Kitchener Rangers alumni on that committee? I was asked, why was a TSN broadcasting executive on that committee when Bob McKenzie, the great insider, is the father of the general manager of the Kitchener Rangers? Like, that's how deep people were going looking for conflict. So the league is taking all of this to heart and intends on making improvements to how that committee is assembled in the future. So I'll just wrap it up with this, Dan, and I think you're going to agree. We've acknowledged a problem exists. It would not have affected the outcome of the vote. We're all thrilled for Guelph, and now let's just move on with looking forward to the 2027 Memorial Cup in a deserving host city.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And that, honestly, in all of this, that's the part that bugged me the most, is this should have been a win for Guelph. This should have been a big celebration. From everything I heard, they put on a terrific presentation. They had great tours. There was really well thought out strategic presentation. A lot of people pitched in. They did a marvelous job. So are we tainting it with this? Wow, why this guy kind of had a conflict, with the the Sleeman sponsorship, and that when that becomes the narrative, it takes away from the celebration of what was a job well done to get the event, and then upcoming the event itself. So yeah, that was the piece that bugged me the most. So yeah, let's be clear. This isn't about sour grapes. We want it in Kitchener, et cetera, et cetera. This was just about, let's keep the narrative where it should be and avoid kind of these stupid mistakes which tend to steal the narrative.
Yeah, you can shoot yourself in the foot. And maybe there was a little bit of that. It's an own goal, if you will. We can move on. And you talk about the bid. And I'm remembering the great piece that Tony Saxon wrote in Guelph today about the winning bid. And one of the things that the Storm did is when they had the committee come into the arena, they had popped popcorn fresh to give you that smell. And just, it's a great way to tug at emotions, right? We walked into Saginaw this past Saturday, and I said to my broadcast partner, Josh Pierce, he said, man, smells great in here. There was a beautiful, like incredible aroma of popcorn and roasted almonds. I'm like, yeah, wait, are they bidding for the Memorial Cup again? I mean, come on. And I actually connected to that, had the just opportunity to speak with Craig Gosselin, managing partner there in Saginaw, about that Memorial Cup. We just had a random encounter in the concourse, and he stopped me to talk about what it meant to Saginaw, what it meant to the franchise to re-engage existing fans and reach new fans who always knew it's going to be a quarter century next year, 25 years for Saginaw, or for the Spirit in Saginaw. And he says, we've got our fan base, but that Memorial Cup, he said, we're still reaping the residual benefits of it. So I don't know how much residual benefit Guelph needs. That is a well-established franchise with great top 5 attendance in the league. But Craig Gosselin made it clear to us while we were there this past weekend that there is a residual benefit. So good on Guelph, and enjoy that in the years ahead.
Yeah, and Saginaw did an amazing job, didn't they? So yeah, like I my takeaway from all this is that if you want the Memorial Cup in the future, pop up a good bucket of popcorn and like that'll get my vote. I'm telling you right now. So.
Okay, come on. Josh Brown in the Waterloo Region Record is always going on about the popcorn at various rinks. And our bus driver, Mikey the Moose Reeves, is always munching on a bucket of popcorn from every rink while he's watching the game, waiting to warm up the bus. It works. It works. There's something about that stuff.
Yep. Stay tuned. Next bidders.
Before we get on to our weekly wraparound with a look at every market, Dan, I just want to run this by you if I can, okay? Bear with me. It's a lengthy list, but when you listen to the names I'm about to say, I think your jaw is going to begin to drop more and more. So here we go, alphabetically, starting with the forwards. Cole Baudouin, Liam Greentree, Jet Luchenko, Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien, Sam O'Reilly. Onto the defense, Kashawn Aitchison, Ben Danford, Cameron Reed, Carter George. All of these are names familiar to the OHL because they're playing on OHL teams right now. And there are more with connections to the OHL. Porter Martone, Zane Perek, Michael Misa, Jack Ivankovic. That's a long list. After just presenting that list to you, Dan, and knowing that one forward, one defenseman, and one goaltender still has to be cut, this is Team Canada's tryout roster for the World Juniors. With utmost respect to our American friends who I know listen religiously to this podcast, tell me, Dan Mahar, that any team at the World Juniors is going to beat that bunch. Tell me they will. And I didn't even get into Gavin McKenna and the other teams that don't have OHL, or other players that don't have OHL connections.
Yeah, it is loaded for bear. And I was just going to say that. That's just the OHL content.
Exactly.
And those are all high-end guys. There is just, and think of the guys that aren't going to come that could have been there if they were. I mean, Macklin Celebrini is eligible. Ben Kindle's eligible. Like, you look at these players that are not going to be there. So anyway, yeah, just going over that OHL list. I love when the World Junior year is heavy on the OHL. Because you're familiar with these players, you can see them. And every single name you just listed is an elite player. So it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun to watch. And just doing my cursory look around the teams that are coming this year, I'm not sure I see anyone beating that team, which is good because it's been a while since we could say that for sure. There's always been some really strong opponents, especially from the States. But that one, to me, has to be the clear favorite this year.
Couldn't agree more. Lots to look forward to. And just a reminder, I feel like this is a really broken record by now, but all eyes will be on junior hockey beginning on Boxing Day. Hey, folks, I don't think I have to tell anybody listening to this podcast, but this level of hockey, while not the all-star variety, but it's being played in a city that either you live in or very near to you for a very reasonable price. Go out and enjoy it because it's a great brand of hockey at a great level, for sure.
Oh, amen.
Amen. Okay. I reminded you a moment ago, the wraparound with a look at every market in this league is coming up. You're going to hear from the new VP of Hockey Ops with the OHL League offices. James Boyd joins us this week on the OHL podcast, plus your prospects of the week still to come. So stay with us on this week's episode of the OHL podcast. The jaw-dropping moments that make hockey, hockey. Experience them all with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. And Missouri listeners, listen up. DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in the Show Me State. New customers, this one's for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Each and every week on this podcast, we want to make sure that the market that you are in, the team that you are a fan of, gets just a wee bit of love. It's something we call the wraparound. And a reminder, we go in alphabetical order. So every once in a while, we'll mix that up, but we're not trying to make you feel like last and least when we get to Windsor and Sudbury at the end, because they are alphabetically at the end. But we just usually go in alphabetical order starting at the top. And Dan is on Western Conference duty this week, which means he's going to start for us in Erie. What do you got from Erie, PA, Dan, on the wraparound this week?
Well, given that it's trade season, Mike, and I thought it was a great time for a check-in, right? So we're trying to spur GMs to make deals. Well,
well, you already did that. How many GMs do you think you have influence over, Mahar?
Well, I'm trying, man. I'm trying. Okay. So GM Dave Brown here, he pulled a deal early in the year with Michael Deck, right? So I wanted to do a check-in at this stage because now when you acquire a player, it's not just inserting that player and his benefits into the lineup. It's what they do to the other players as well. And I just wanted to say that, so Dylan Edwards played 16 games prior to Michael Deck joining the Erie Otters and got 13 points. He has now played 16 games since Michael Deck joined the lineup and has 26 points in those games. Literally double the production. And, there's other factors at play as well. But this, when you go and make moves and acquire these pieces, you're actually kickstarting some of your lineup as well. So I just wanted to point out how these trades have trickle-down effects, and it seriously sparked that top line in Erie.
Interesting. Okay, so now you're throwing flowers at Dave Brown, who, by the way, years ago said, if I ever go out for an Erie Seawolves game in the summertime, which is the minor league ball team that the park is attached to the Erie Insurance Arena, he'd buy the beer, except only if it was on $1 or $2 beer night. But either way, I haven't cashed in on that, Dan. So, hey, Brownie, did you hear what Dan Mahar just said about you? He likes your deals. I'm coming out to see the Dan, we should go. You want to make an OHL podcast summer trip to watch some minor ball?
I'm 100%. I love minor league ball. I don't know if the beer offer applies to me, but I'll keep pumping Dave Brown's tires as long as I need to get that. So,
all right. Well, listen, if it's $2 a beer, we can get Brownie's Tyrannosaurus Rex arms out of his, into his wallet for a couple of cold ones on that day. All right, I'm going to be in Barrie to start the eastern side of the wraparound. And Dan already alluded to this earlier when we were talking about interesting teams come trade deadline time. Does anyone remember when the Colts were 3-7-0-3 to start the season? And they were stuck in an ugly 6-game losing streak? Yeah, I don't remember that time either, because Barrie has now won 5 in a row, 9 of 10, and they have got points in 17 of their past 18 games, picking up 32 of a possible 36 points. The wagon is a rolling in Simcoe County.
And it's a great segue because they are a wagon, and I'm going to a wagon right now. The Flint Firebirds, who I already referenced, what a team they are right now. And you just mentioned Team Canada, Mike, in the World Juniors, and I wanted to bring this up as it relates to Flint Firebirds because sometimes these decisions start in the summer, they linger a bit into the fall, and you have a pretty clear picture of who's being invited. Do you think Team Canada might have rethought things if they knew they had a 6'7" forward who was going to lead the OHL in scoring at this point? Because Nathan Aspinall is doing just that, and he may have just bloomed a tiny bit too late for Team Canada's notice. But I'll tell you, they could have done worse than bringing Nathan Aspinall on board to join that list you just said.
His run of late has been absolutely ridiculous, hasn't it?
It's crazy. I love seeing players take leaps like he did. But yeah, it would have been nice for him to get a little consideration. But that team is loaded.
From the World Junior Championships and Aspinall not being there to the top prospects game coming up next month in Peterborough, as I look at Brampton, you will find first-year forward Matej Stankoven going to the top prospects game. He played last year in Slovakia, picked up 28 points in 29 games with a U20 team there. But Stankoven has 6 goals, 6 assists in 30 games with the Steelheads this season. And I bring the name up, not just because he's going to the top prospects game, but probably people know the name Stankoven pretty well, right? And yes, Mate is a distant cousin of Logan Stankoven, who won back-to-back World Junior golds and is a former CHL Player of the Year with Kamloops. So some good bloodlines there.
Bit of a junior tide theme, a World Junior tide theme here too. So
there you go.
All right, so moving to Guelph, Mike, a little bit of turmoil, and I want to point out a couple of the reasons why. So this week, outscored 18-7 in stops in Flint and 2 with Sarnia. And, illness was a factor. We know a few players had the flu this week, and that can certainly impact things. But I also wonder how much that trade deadline is starting to impact that room. Just a little bit of distraction knowing some shoes are about to drop there as well. So Guelph on a bit of a downswing as we get into the Christmas season.
All right, I'm moving to Brantford next on the eastern side of things, and I guess you could say a downside. Here, it was 23 games, as we know, without a regulation loss. So it might look like the Bulldogs have come back down to earth with 3 regulation losses in just their past 8 games. Heck, the Bulldogs don't even own all of the top spots on the league's stats pages anymore. Dan already mentioned Nathan Aspinall. Kieran Walton has also joined the top 5 scorers. Chase Reed has snuck his way in amongst 4 Bulldogs in the plus-minus rankings. But before you go and write the obituary on this dominating season so far, just remember that Brantford is without 7 regulars thanks to the World Juniors. That's right. I said 7. Jake O'Brien, Merrick Van Acker, Ben Danford, and Jet Luchenko all trying out with Team Canada. And then you've got Adam Banach, Vlad Dravetsky, and Adam Jurasek playing for Czechia. So there you go. And just because all of the comparisons have been made, and I think it's understandable, with the London Knights wagons of years past, this Brantford Bulldogs team, London last year, when their regulars left for the World Juniors, went 7-1-1 without the big dogs. So there you go.
And without the big dogs, already shut out those London Knights 2-0 at home. So yeah, those players, sometimes when the others are gone, they step up.
Absolutely. And if I can just do a quick other note quickly, 2 more.
Sure.
Brantford has also signed their 10th round pick from 2024, Heath Bogart. He's had a strong season with Collingwood in the OJHL, and former Bulldog Nick Lardis, who had a ridiculous 71 goals and 117 points last season, made his NHL debut with the Blackhawks this past weekend, played 15 minutes. So that's a lot on the Bulldogs, but wrapping it up.
Well, there's a lot going on there. And this is my favorite time of year, Mike. Not just the Christmas season, but this is the time of year. It's like moving day in a golf tournament where I feel like some of these players really take the next step as we get into December and middle of the year. Moving to Kitchener, that's kind of what I wanted to focus on. You take Avery Anstis, 3 points in his first 25 games, then 3 in his last 4. Weston Cameron, 0 goals in his first 16, 4 goals in his last 6. This is a guy. These are 2 kids, 17-year-old kids coming into their own in this league, waiting for their opportunity, getting it now, and starting to produce. And all the better for Weston Cameron, who faced a potentially life-threatening illness for a stretch there this year. So good on him for coming back stronger than ever, and nice to see those kids take the step.
Next up for me is Niagara on the eastern side. Ryan Robrecht and Ben Reisnecker are headed to the top prospects game. And the Ice Dogs erased a winless November. Let that sink in. 9 straight losses. They did not pick up a single W in the month of November, but they started December with a 3-game winning streak, including one over London. And that's got to be a little bit like a homecoming, doesn't it? You've got Liam Spencer and Noah Reed, former Knights, now with the Ice Dogs. You've got Max Crete and Brady Waslin, now Knights, formerly of the Ice Dogs. And following that 3-game winning streak, the Ice Dogs also held the surging Colts to just 2 goals in a loss the next night. So for a nice little 4-game run with 3 wins and a close loss to Barrie. I know we were talking about the woes that are in St. Catharines, but occasionally, the sun shines there in St. Kitts too.
Oh, for sure. Place where the sun always shines is London, right? So I'm going to do my best Elliot Friedman impression here and say, I wonder about a couple things. And, based on the recent body of work, I wonder if goaltender Sebastian Gatto is stealing the crease a bit there. He's been really effective in his last few starts and starting to get the confidence of his team. So I just wonder if we'll see that more down the stretch. And then another curious one for me. Logan Harvey is a kid I predicted would kind of come out of the woodwork this year and really take off and start showing up on the top score charts. Well, it hasn't really unfolded that way. Hasn't seemed to be the year he wanted, just 3 goals in 31 games. And, with the London Knights history, sometimes when a player isn't quite blossoming there, fitting in, the Hunters haven't had a problem moving them to a new location. So we'll see if there's just a change of scenery there. But yeah, things haven't gone as they hoped for Logan Harvey.
As I look next here at the North Bay Battalion on the Wraparound, I'm thinking about an interesting team that we didn't touch on when it comes to trade deadline time. I suspect they're pretty happy with where they're at, but the Battalion, I think, are starting to round into form, and they're certainly making the Bort Longyear a tough place to play. They've won their last 6 straight at home, and they seem to be finding a bit of a groove there in that second tier, if you will, in the Eastern Conference. I mean, you've got Brantford, you've got Barrie, you've got Ottawa, and then you got the rest. And the Battalion have put themselves right in that mix. They've got points in 11 of their past 15 games.
Yeah, team that I expected would do fairly well, so it's nice to see them starting to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, moving to Owen Sound, Mike, I just wanted to highlight kind of one of those crazy games that we all love watching that coaches hate. So Owen Sound went up to Sudbury, game against the Wolves, and if you want to count the shootout, 15 times a goaltender was beaten that game in the 7-6 shootout loss for Owen Sound. And also interestingly, 2 penalty shots in that game, and a third one that never happened in a twist of fate you almost never see. Player on a breakaway, 5-6 seconds remaining in the game, gets a little hook. Referee's calling a penalty shot. Well, guess what? The other team didn't touch the puck in that 5 seconds. The buzzer goes, so penalty shot negated. Otherwise, we would have had a third penalty shot prior to the shootout. But what a wild game, and I'm sure the coaches don't want to see that one again.
Absolutely not. I mean, scoring 4 goals in you're down 4-2, you're up 6, it's crazy. They were down 6-2 and came all the way back. Both teams scoring 4 goals in a period in that one. And yeah, those are the ones they talk about burning the tapes in. All right,
100%.
You brought up the fruits of a trade when it comes to the Erie Otters and how Dylan Edwards' play has come up since having Michael Deck join the team. I'm looking at the benefits too of a trade, or maybe just the change of scenery, the increased role as I look at Oshawa. Aidan O'Donnell continuing to produce even after leaving that stacked team in Brantford. He's got 9 points in 15 games with the Jennies after coming over in that trade with the Bulldogs. And 8 of those 9 points for Aidan O'Donnell have come in just the last 8 games. So he's really finding a stride with an increased role in Oshawa.
Well, good for him. Yeah, so moving to Saginaw, Mike, an interesting week there as well. So we not always do 6'7" forwards pan out, and we saw the release of Miro Chatan headed to the Quebec League. Nice to see him score in his second game in Shawinigan. So, see if he can get restarted in the Quebec League. Didn't work out in Saginaw. Also saw suspensions this week to Hayden Barch and Dima Zilkin. So they were without them for a few games this week. So little bit of an interesting, challenging week for the Spirit, but it was great to see when you were down there on Saturday, Mike, when the Rangers were there. A great spirit in that building. The fans were alive, and it was great to see. Entertaining game, shootout loss for the Spirit, but they show up every game to entertain those fans.
Did I mention how good the arena smelled, Dan? I just want to. Did I mention that part? God, it smelled good in there on Saturday.
You might have mentioned that.
Off to Ottawa for me in the East, and the 67s are not sneaking up on anybody anymore. Let's just be clear about that. Sorry, Ottawa. After missing the playoffs last year and getting no love from the prognosticators this year, that would include Dan and I, Ottawa started the month of December at the top, the very top of the OHL power rankings. That would be ahead of Brantford, ahead of Windsor, even ahead of the high-flying Firebirds. Now, could it be that they are there because of rookie goaltender Ryan Felterolf? Or Fedorov, pardon me. I got to get this right. Fedorov, Ryan, I'll get it right. But
Ryder,
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just going to call him Ryder from now on. There you go.
Yes, yeah.
He is a ridiculous 11-1 in his past 12 starts. RF. We're going to call you RF. 25 goals allowed over 12 games. It's easy to do the math. A wee bit over 2 for Ryder Fedorov as the goaltender in Ottawa, coming out of almost nowhere. Great story there in the nation's capital.
Yeah, heck of a goaltender, too. All right. Going to Sarnia, Mike. I know it's been a tough year, but starting to see a few things that fans can get excited about, I hope. And, so this week, 2008-born Alessandro Diorio named captain in Sarnia. It's not often you see a kid that young wear the C, so that's great for that kid and going to be there for a couple years to lead that team. So see them sort out their leadership group for the future is great. And also, an under-the-radar kid, a kid that's not even eligible for this year's NHL draft because of a late birthday, but Easton Wallace, quietly having a strong year there, some skilled mitts on that kid. So, you're starting to see that crop of the 2008 start to come around for the Sarnia Sting, and they got a couple wins this week as a result.
Yeah, how about sweeping a 3-3? Like, you don't often see that in 2 of those games in a home-and-home with the Guelph Storm. Very impressive stuff for the Sarnia Sting this past week, for sure. The Peterborough Petes had a nice finish to their week as well. Defenseman Callum Hartnell has his first career OHL point, and it was a big one. He had the primary assist on Adam Levac's game-winning goal as the Petes snapped a 3-game skid with a win over none other than the Brantford Bulldogs. And how about this? Peterborough has now beaten Brantford twice at home this season, and it's the second win for the Petes over a top 10 team in their past 5 games. They also picked up a dub over Flint. So it goes back to what you were saying earlier too, Dan, with this interesting position the Petes are in. They're certainly showing, at least in flashes, that they can play with the big boys. So what are they going to do in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, they sure can. Yeah, Sioux, we know where they're headed. And part of the reason they're headed there is because they always draft well. And, this kid, 2009 born, Noah Loss, 3 points in a comeback win over Brampton. So when you're getting 3-point games and a 4-3 win from your 16-year-olds, you're drafting well, you're developing well, and that's why you stay near the top of the conference. And also, another little bit of intriguing good news for the Sioux. It looks like Justin Cloutier might be back in the new year. This is a kid that had gone to Arizona to play in the NCAA, suffered from a significant illness, hasn't been able to get in games down there, and it's now sounding a lot like we might see him in the red and white in the new year. And we know what he can do for that lineup as well, Mike. So there's an addition without subtracting anything. So look out for those Sioux Greyhounds.
All right, I wrap things up on the Wraparound in Sudbury. That's the last alphabetical side for me here in the East. And when you are one of the lowest scoring teams in the league, you are going to remember a 4-goal comeback. So here's to the Wolf Den, trailing Owen Sound 6-2 last weekend, coming back to win 7-6 in a shootout. Dan already alluded to that game earlier. Sudbury got 3 goals in less than 3 minutes in the second period to complete the comeback. Now, just think about this, though. How tired was that Wolf, Dan, in that, like, the Wolf that comes out on the wire, right? Like, 3 times in 3 minutes. That's an old Wolf. As far as I know, it's been there the entire time that the Sudbury Arena has been. Like, come on. That is a tired Wolf.
Well,
that's all I want to say.
And getting that much exercise. Sorry, I was just getting that much exercise is even mangier, so.
Absolutely. The Wolves just wrapped up a 4-game homestand, by the way, during which they went 3-1. Sudbury has won 6 of its past 7 at home overall.
Nice. And I will wrap up mine with the Windsor Spitfires. You know, this is just amusing, Mike. A little musing on my behalf when I look at the Windsor Spitfires, because we know kind of treading water. But I look at what my point projections were throughout that lineup, and really Carson Woodall is the only player who I would say is exceeding those right now. So a lot of players just kind of hovering around kind of the lower end of what you thought they might do this year. Not by any stretch disappointing, but when most of your lineup is just, 10-20% less productive than you expected, that's why maybe you're not running away with things like you thought you would. So we'll see what Bill Bowler does to spur that roster. I expect there's going to be an addition or two there before we get to the deadline.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And it caught my attention a moment ago when I said I'm going to wrap in Sudbury. I shouldn't be finishing before you when you start first, and that's because I'm going to be the enemy of the Limestone City. I'm so sorry, Kingston. I somehow skipped over you. So please let me go back and tell you about how the Fronts snapped an ugly 9-game losing streak when they put up back-to-back wins over Oshawa and Windsor. And it was Flames prospect Jacob Battaglia setting the tone in snapping that skid. He picked up 4 points in Kingston's 7-3 win over the Gens. That was his first multi-point game in more than a month. And Dan mentioned earlier, it's going to be really interesting to see what Corey Cooper does up there. But perhaps Battaglia is a guy that has an address change. Don't forget, too, about Matthew Minchak. We've talked about him a ton. He's been invited to the Top Prospects game next month, which is, I think, really interesting because he was overlooked in the NHL draft last year, which was his first time through. And he may be, for my money, Dan, the top goalie available next June.
I think so. If you look at all the boxes that NHL scouts want you to check as a goaltender, he checks a lot of them. Size, the lateral movement, the technical, the way he finds pucks in traffic. So, yeah, I expect that's a name you're going to hear called much earlier than people would have thought.
A name that you know well, I think, in this league, James Boyd. He's the new VP of Hockey Operations with the Ontario Hockey League. He joins us for a conversation next. Also, we're going to dip into the email inbox and your prospects of the week still to come on this week's episode of the OHL Podcast. The holidays are here, and that means it's the most wonderful time of the year to save with Rakuten. Use Rakuten to stack cash back at your favorite stores on top of holiday sales. That's savings on savings. With Rakuten, you can get cash back on gifts for everyone on your list, from toys for the kids to kitchen gear for the person who loves to cook, to electronics for everyone. You can even save on something for yourself. Just shop the stores you love, and cashback is automatically added to your account. And you can choose to get paid via Interac e-transfer, PayPal, or check. And when I talk about the stores you love, consider these merchants that are available through the Rakuten platform. You've got Expedia, Adidas, Old Navy, PetSmart, Dyson, Lego, Sporting Life. Take your pick. Join for free today and get a new member bonus after minimum qualifying purchases. Just go to Rakuten.ca, download the app, or install the browser extension. That's Rakuten. Terms and conditions apply. He is the Ontario Hockey League's new Vice President of Hockey Operations. James Boyd joins the OHL podcast first and foremost. Thank you very much for spending some time with us here today.
No, my pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I can't help but think, and I'm sure this isn't lost on you, that the Ottawa 67s are a pretty damn nice story in the OHL this year. Surprising a lot of people. You were there as the GM. Now you're in the league office. Why the decision to make the move?
Well, it's been in the works for a while. I was looking to, take the next step in my career or challenge myself in a different way. And Ottawa is a great organization. It was a great place to be. Wonderful people there. So it was a difficult decision. But when this opportunity came up, I looked at it and said, there's an opportunity to maybe, continue to build my network and work on some of my existing skills, maybe sharpen the knife a little bit. So I think that, when we started to dig into it and I learned some of the specifics, I kind of the interest intensified, and then working with Brian Crawford and in the league and learning more about it, it just seems like such an interesting job and a natural fit to continue to learn and grow.
If things continue as they have been going in Ottawa and they have a really nice season and a deep run, you're going to be pointing back saying, hey, my fingerprints are still on that organization for this year's run?
Probably. No. They've got a great thing going there, and a good group, and really a strong scouting. Like any successful junior franchise, they've got some continuity in their scouts and their coaching and management, and there was a natural succession plan there with Jan Eggert, longtime associate general manager and director of scouting, assuming the GM role there. So a lot of the things will remain in place, but they've got an excellent process there, and it's not one person that makes that team go. It's a collection of people, and I was happy to be a part of that, but they're going to continue on just fine without me.
So let's draw that curtain back a little bit. What does a vice president of hockey operations do?
Well, lots of stuff I'm learning. But make sure that the hockey operations are running smoothly with the league, and we've got our different departments: player safety and officiating and education and player experience. So all the different departments that function well at the league. I'm there to support the people in place there, but also it's a forward-thinking league, so we're looking to expand those programs. We're looking to bring in best practices from other leagues. See how we can support the athletes, but really it's about the product on the ice. It's about making sure that we have the best possible players, the best possible officials, the best in-arena environment for the fans, and just looking to improve as much as we can. So it's not about keeping things status quo and moving along. It's about how do we challenge ourselves and improve the league, continuously improve the league. And they've done a great job here. I'm excited to bring some fresh ideas and work with people to improve it.
I don't know how you prioritize things like that, James, because each of them plays such an integral role to the overall experience for fans and for players, of course. And all of these things are under the microscope more than ever because of this changing landscape in junior hockey, right? With the NCAA rule change a year ago, it feels a little bit like the wild, wild west right now when it comes to player movement. What challenges do you see the Ontario Hockey League facing in maintaining the status that I believe it still has as the greatest development league in the world?
Well, I think it's, the main thing is maintaining our standard and improving that standard and making sure that players have everything that they need, in each of the centers, and make sure that they're having a great experience. And, I've always used the line, and when you're operating an individual team, it's about eliminating excuses. It's about, making sure the players recognize they have everything they need to be successful. And I think that's that's ground zero. That's the starting point. But then it's working as a league together to, like I said, improve everything for the athlete, and making sure we're on point with education and player development, and working in tandem with the other leagues too. So I think that we've got to improve. I think that this is a point in time where we've got to challenge ourselves to really take a quantum leap forward. And some of this is going to be new ideas, and it's really a shift from maybe traditional hockey thinking. There's lots of stuff on the table, but we've got to decide as a group, how to continue to be the best development league in the world, and be a place that players choose to continue their career for as long as possible.
How do you view that NCAA rule change, James, and its impact on the Ontario Hockey League, the Canadian Hockey League?
Well, I think I've always thought that at 16 or 17 years old, when the NCAA, forbid OHL players from entering their league, that I thought it was a really difficult position for the players and the families to make a decision at that point in time. Especially those that are really academically focused. And our league was a great, I believe in the league. I think, there's a number of hundreds of players, that have combined academics and in hockey in the OHL and been really successful. But I thought it was really, really difficult at that time to make that decision. So the fact that that is removed, that decision is removed, and now, of course, they maintain their eligibility. I think provides more flexibility to the players and the families, and it's a different entry into the league, and I think that's great. And I think that players have options, and now the pathway's a little bit easier to choose. So I think that's great. I think that the student athletes in the OHL they now have an opportunity beyond the OHL, maybe to continue. They've of course still got youth sports, which I'm a proud alumnus of the University of Guelph. Played for some great teams there, so I'm still a big fan of youth sports hockey. But now there's the NCAA to continue. So the fact that they've got those options, that's great. I think that the uncertainty in the hockey world with player movement, and I think that there's some work to be done there between leagues. When I talk to my friends who coach in the NCAA, they've got some serious concerns about the transfer portal and some of the rules and regulations there. I think there's some teams in Major Junior that have some concerns about player retention and how do you build a team if you're going to be losing players all the time. And so these are important discussions, and they're going to continue. But I think there has to be the development path has been upended here, or we're viewing it a little bit differently. We've got to work together to make sure that the players continue to have the best possible experience and pathway, and whether that's the NHL or obtaining a degree from a university in Canada or the US.
Player retention is a really interesting one right now, at least from where I'm sitting. I look at a team like Kitchener, the one that I cover, obviously, and where I live, millions of dollars invested into the rink, player amenities this offseason. London does something similar. Oshawa's in the process. How do we ensure, though, James, that all 20 teams, in this league can remain competitive?
Well, I think there's, any decisions that are made at the league level, we have to be mindful that, the water in the harbor raises all boats, and there's some projects going on in the league now. Ottawa just got approved for a new facility, state-of-the-art facility, which is going to be spectacular. There's renovations going on in other communities that are going to improve the facilities, and talk of some new buildings too in some places. So these are, of course, these municipal projects. Some of them they're years in the making, and now we're seeing them come to fruition, and that's great. But I think that we've got to make sure that there's the minimum standard in the league, and that there's a minimum standard that every team's got to continue to uphold, and along with making those improvements. So, but I really believe too, Mike, that the strength of the OHL is the people. It's the coaching, it's the players in the league, the best players playing against the best players. It's the coaching in the league is really, really strong. When I talk to NHL personnel or people in the IHF, everyone recognizes that the OHL has very strong coaching and programs for player development. So, we got to continue to attract the best people. And, facilities are going to be different in every community, but the people are going to drive the product on the ice. And I think we got to be very conscious of that.
Great to have James Boyd join us on the OHL podcast this week. You want to see the entirety of that conversation. You just heard some of the highlights. By all means, go back and check out the entire thing. The link to that full interview with James Boyd is in the description, the show notes of this episode of the OHL podcast. Go back to listen to it all as we dive into the email inbox for this week. And I mentioned earlier, Dan, our friends in the States. I didn't mean to offend them when I said, back-to-back World Junior Golds. Okay, I'm happy for you, but boy, oh boy, does Team Canada look good this year. Mike from Wilkes-Barre, PA, formerly of Syracuse, New York, by way of Johnstown, PA. Mike, you're a well-traveled man. He loves the pod. He loves the OHL. He's got a question for us, Dan. Are there geographical restrictions on CHL teams for signing players? For example, if a player from Texas wants to play for Kitchener, can he? Is Kitchener allowed to sign him, or is he exclusive to WHL teams? Mike from Wilkes-Barre wants to know the answer to that, Dan Mahar.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for the question. Yeah, so the territorial rights to have exclusivity, the league has to have a team in that jurisdiction. So if you look at Pennsylvania with Erie, you look at Michigan with Saginaw and Flint, territory of the OHL. So players from there go there first. And Quebec League, same. Like, so West has a couple American teams as well. So that's kind of how it works. If you do not have a team in the CHL in your state, then it's kind of the Wild West. It's open for, so that Texas example you gave, unless Commissioner Crawford is setting something up in San Antonio that we're not aware of, that's fair game for anyone in the CHL to kind of recruit from if they can convince a kid to come. But yeah, so you only have the exclusive rights if you have a team there at this point, which is why the OHL was so interested in getting a team potentially in Rochester or Niagara Falls, New York. They've wanted to claim that New York territory as long as I can remember.
It's funny when, Mike was just using the random example, I'm sure, of Texas, and all I could think about, Dan, and this is just one of those things that has stuck out because it was a place I had never heard of, and I thought it was an interesting sounding place. Plano, I think that's how to pronounce it, could be Plano, but Plano, Texas. I remember Stefan Nason with the Plymouth Whalers hailed from Plano, Texas, and so he played in this league, Mike, and as Dan has just described to you, the Wild West aspect of this, I think, continues because, yeah, unless there's a team there, there is no real territorial restriction. So there you go. Appreciate you listening to the pod, and we are happy to answer questions anytime. Just drop us an email, ohlpodcast@rogers.com. Before we wrap up, every week we like to leave you with something we call the prospect of the week, or I guess it would be more polite to say someone called the prospect of the week. This is the NHL draft eligible player that caught the most of Dan's and or my attention. And Dan, we'll start with you. Who caught your attention this week for the wraparound? Or, sorry, for the prospect of the week.
The prospect. So the guy who caught my attention, Mike, was a game I watched, put up a couple of points and a +3, and that's Jackson Cover of the London Knights. And, he's had a year when you look at what we thought before this year, he was going to have a big breakout year. And to some extent, he has. 26 points, great total for a rookie in this league at this stage of the game. Physical, like he's got the physical tools that NHL teams look for, a lot going for him. I think once he starts to sort out the defensive side of the game and the consistency of effort, you'll see him climb those draft boards towards the end of the year. But offensively, great start to the season for Jackson Cover in London.
Yeah, and this is a guy that, remember, is in, I believe, his 5th year of organized ice hockey, right? So hails from a part of the world where hockey wasn't a thing, started in roller hockey, and here the Hunters found him, and here he is now getting some first-round potential buzz into the National Hockey League. 5 years in organized ice hockey. Pretty wild story.
An athlete's an athlete, right? Yeah.
Very good point. All right. For me, when I'm looking at my prospect of the week, I'm not going to go too far down the list of what you might call studs, really high-end potential here, but I want you to know, Vince in St. Catharines, we see you, and Vince is keeping a close eye on his Ice Dogs. Dan and I tend to go a little bit deeper on these selections for prospects of the week, but we can't overlook some of the big performances that come from players who are highly rated for the upcoming draft. And in this case, for the Ice Dogs, that would be Ryan Rubrek. Of course, he's in his 3rd year with that late birthday, but this is his first go-round for the NHL draft. And he had himself a game, didn't he, when the Niagara Ice Dogs beat the London Knights? 4 points, 2 goals and 2 assists. The Ice Dogs only scored 4 goals in that game, so he was in on every one of them. And Rubrek's got 11 points in his past 7 for the Ice Dogs. And so for that effort and Vince's note from St. Kitts, I've got Ryan Rubrek as my prospect of the week.
And that was a nice game to see from him, Mike, because every time I watch him, he feels like a guy that can just take over games if he wants to. He just needs to want to a few more times down the stretch because he'll boost his stock back up. But what a player.
One more episode for us before the Christmas break. Will we have more trades to talk about by next week? We'll have a final roster for Team Canada and more. Anything that you need to know about the Ontario Hockey League is right here on the OHL podcast. My buddy across the way is Dan Mahar. You'll find him on X at his name, Dan Mahar. I am on X at Farwell_OHL, and you'll find us in all kinds of places. It's Facebook, the OHL podcast, Instagram, the OHL podcast, on YouTube, the OHL podcast. Comment, like, interact with us, and send us an email anytime, ohlpodcast@rogers.com. We love interacting with you almost as much as we love this league, but we love this league an awful lot. Maybe just I'm not trying to play favorites here, but we love this league. Drop us a note anytime, though. We're happy to have the conversation, and we'll be back for one more before Christmas right here, wherever you get your podcasts on the OHL Podcast.